welcome, welcome. Good morning to our friends in the West. Good afternoon to our friends in the East. Thank you all for being here. And welcome to the Keep It in the Forest webinar for grassroots activists. We want to thank you all very, very much for being here and for taking an hour out of your busy day to support our forests. As you all know, we all need our forests to survive, but today they need our support. So thank you for being here. And as an introduction, just before we get started with the slides, I wanted to give a quick acknowledgement. We are in dark times concerning environmental protections, and it seems hard to find hope right now with everything going on from executive orders and budget cuts. But I want you all to know that we have over 100 people here signed up today to protect our forests. So that in itself is enormously helpful, and I thank you very much for being here. And also, just so you know, all is not lost. The big greens are filing lawsuits to halt the destruction. And yes, the judicial has been undermined and litigation is very expensive, but we do hope that they can keep it up until there's a shift in the power balance. In addition to that, we are seeing a very big pushback against these destructive actions, and we hope that we can take advantage and fan the flames a bit, get momentum for forest protections based on that. So with that said, everybody's ready, let's get started. Introductions first. If my website wants to, there you go. So we are here for the grassroots webinar on Keep It in the Forest. It's a part of the Forest Carbon Coalition. The Forest Carbon Coalition is a loosely organized 120 organizations, more or less, and some individual activists. We are here for information sharing to support each other for forest protections. The Keep It in the Forest, from our perspective here today, is really a call to grassroots activism. And it revolves around 12 high-level articles. Creating 12 articles was the idea of the Forest Carbon Coalition's co-director, John Talberth. He's also the director of the chief economist at the Center for Sustainable Economy. I want to thank him very much for all his hard work in getting this together. And I also wanted to acknowledge Doug Bevington from Environment Now for making this possible. Today, we are honored here to have Dr. Chad Hansen from the John Muir Project. Chad is a forest and fire ecologist based in California and author of Smokescreen, Debunking Myths to Save Our Forests and Our Climate. And he's the co-author and co-editor of Mixed Severity Fires, Nature's Phoenix. Chad will be explaining the Forest Protection and Climate Justice Act. And my name is Sonia Demiray. I'm the founding director of the Climate Communications Coalition. I'm out of Greater Washington, D.C. area. And we try to move people to act on climate, protect forests and biodiversity, and we support environmental conservation and climate justice organizations in their communications and outreach. We are all members of the Forest Carbon Coalition, and if you are not yet, we invite you to register. You have the link up there, forestcarboncoalition.org. So let's have a look at what we're going to be looking at today, the agenda. First, we're going to have a quick overview of the Keep It in the Forest campaign, what it is. Then we will take a look at the 12 broad topics and the key messaging points that we have taken out of them. And then we will look at the Forest Protection and Climate Justice Act. Chad will discuss that. After that, we will go into how you can help. What can you do to support our forests? And we have several resources. We have a website. I believe Becca has already shared that. And we have additional Keep It in the Forest drive and additional assets. I forgot, how dare I? I wanted to give a shout out to Jennifer Mamola, who was going to be co-hosting here, but she is in Reno, helping a forest group there on an emergency. And thank you very much, Chad, for jumping in for her. And also, I wanted to thank Becca. She is manning the Zoom and the technical aspects out of Colorado. So thank you all for being here. So what is the Keep It in the Forest campaign? The Keep It in the Forest campaign is an educational campaign that dispels the disinformation around forests and forestry. It's a grassroots / bottoms-up campaign And really what that means is we're trying to create a groundswell of data-driven information to dispel the misinformation that has been pushed out by the Forest Service and the industry. So for people who have their hearts in the forest like me, I like to liken this a bit to a mycelial network. We are growing, we are sharing resources, we are supporting each other, connecting the nodes. The fruiting bodies that might come up from this would be op-eds, letters to the editor, interviews, presentations to your community, anything to basically emit more spores and germinate more networks. Why are we doing this? Well, our forests are under attack. They are host to 80% of terrestrial life. They balance the weather, they avert biodiversity collapse, they provide our ecosystem services and so much more. Our biosphere depends on the forest, life depends on the forests, and they are under attack. So who is working on this? All of us here, 100 and some people here, in addition to the entire Forest Carbon Coalition, and any group or individual wanting to support this effort and to help our forests. And when are we doing this? Well, we are already halfway through our 12-article series. I don't know if you've received the one on offsets this morning. And really, we are working to create this groundswell to sort of soften the 119th Congress and help introduce the Forest Protection and Climate Justice Act, in addition to, importantly, informing the public about the truth about our forests. We're doing it at all levels across the country, local, state, regional, nothing's too big, nothing's too small. We need to get the truth out about our forests everywhere possible and at any time possible. All the 12 articles kind of sort of ended with the 3 overarching goals for the Forest Carbon Coalition that all these 120 organizations have agreed upon. The first one would be to permanently protect all public forests. That's local, state, federal forests. This would be through pro-forestation. In other words, no management. Leave them be, let them evolve naturally. The second premise is to extend logging rotations on private working lands and halt any harmful management practices. And in addition, we want to acquire additional afforested lands for permanent protection, really to connect all those forest reserves and create the wildlife corridors and the ecosystem service platforms that we need. So first, we're going to have a quick look at the 12 main topics and the messaging points that we have distilled from these. And ideally for you, think about what applies to you, what occurs in your neck of the wood, what topics you might want to delve into a little deeper. After that, we will go into how this translates into action on a federal level, which Chad will be talking about the Forest Protection and Climate Justice Act. And then we'll go into the specific actions that you can take. And so we will start by looking at the 12 topics featured on the grassroots website. And I think we will go straight to this website because it's visually more interesting. But just so you know, everything I'm saying is on the slides that will be distributed or are also in the chat. And then we will distribute the webinar recording, the slides, and the link to this website to everybody who is attending so that you have everything and you can, on your own time, take time out and read through everything because there's a lot of information here. So let's go to the grassroots website. And it worked. Great. So let's start with the first topic. I've also uploaded some videos and some additional charts and data that might be of interest. The first topic we have is fire. So this one was written by Chad. What we hear a lot are lies similar to forest management is absolutely necessary for fuel suppression, for wildfire prevention, that forests are too dense, forests need to be thinned, etc. The truth is that thinning those forests emits 3 times the carbon dioxide of the wildfire, and wildfires become more extreme because we dry out the forest floors and we remove the barriers to the winds that carry the embers even further. We need to harden the communities and not log backcountry forests, which is happening a lot, and that's really a ruse for profit-driven timber. And we need to redirect logging subsidies to forest acquisition and protection to create jobs program that will ensure fire-safe communities. And Chad will go into that with more detail with the bill that we are proposing. The second topic that has already been going out as well is regarding climate neutrality. We hear a lot that logging is climate neutral or beneficial for the climate, that wood products are an important solution for the climate, and that burning woody biomass, for example, is neutral. Many of you may have heard of the executive order that was just issued on the 1st of March about increasing timber for national security, which is completely backwards. We need to increase the trees and leave the trees in the forest so that they can help us with national security regarding climate change. In any case, the truth is logging is one of the most efficient emissions-heavy activities. We need to consider also the foregone carbon sequestration from log to trees. Logged forests cannot protect communities from weather, and we need to invest in alternative material to wood products. An additional topic is about really calling the forest, it's too full of weeds, there's too much litter, it needs to be cleaned up, prescribed burns are good for it, we need to rake the forests and other silly things. The truth is that natural forest ecosystems, especially the old ones, are like pharmacies. They are wellness sanctuaries for physical, mental, and spiritual health. Trees and plants that depend on them are unique and they have biomedical properties. And the biogenic volatile organic compounds from trees boost our immunity and mood. They're also really an important asset for public health, both for preventing and for fighting pathogens. Think about COVID and the chemicals we extracted there for the forest. And in addition, we have the mindfulness, the connection, and the recreation. One topic that we are hearing more and more and more about, and I want to call out real quick that on the 7th of April, we have the National Day to Break Big Biomass. So please keep an eye out for that, is the biomass issue. We hear that woody biomass for energy is waste wood, that it's a climate solution, it's renewable energy, or even that it's good for the forest. The truth is that biomass is not renewable. According to the United Nations, renewable means replenished faster than consumed, which forests clearly are not. Burning wood also emits 1.5 times the emissions of burning coal per unit energy produced. We do have a massive industry and lobby that has created a lot of subsidies, incentives, which are ingrained in our laws, which need to be removed. And really, we are eroding our own forests for other countries' benefits through biomass. In addition to that, it has really negative environmental justice implications, and it's terrible for your health, whether you are burning wood in your stove or if it's burning pellets on an industrial level. If you're living in California, we'll have heard of the Golden State National Resources plant, and which is already threatening the forests of California, Oregon, and potentially Washington. Another thing we hear a lot is that wood products are a climate solution. Things like cross-laminated timber are stronger than steel, and they are better and have less of a carbon footprint than steel. The truth is that small diameter timber plantations, which are the ones used for cross-laminated timber, are really bad for the climate, not just for the logging, but also because of biodiversity has no benefits from them. 3 to 9 tons of CO2 are emitted per each ton of CO2 stored in wood products. This is a very important fact that industry is completely ignoring. If we do a life cycle analysis of the logging and of any wood product, including soil sea loss and land conversion, it shows that mass timber has a 6% higher carbon footprint even than concrete. So we need to protect the federal forests. We need to improve harvest practices on private land and connect the forest reserves. Today's article that went out, if you've had a chance to read it, was about offsets. We hear that it's good for forests, that it helps polluters reduce their emissions. But the truth is, it's really, it's become, unfortunately, a scheme to greenwash operations without corporations cleaning up their act at all. And it's providing a false sense of achievement regarding reaching our climate goals. There are 3 types of forest management practices that are covered in offsets. Improved forest management, avoided conversion, and afforestation, reforestation. Improved forest management, for example, includes logging, burning, thinning, pesticides. That is not good for the forest, so it shouldn't be covered. And really, we are adding a layer of profit to forest management practices that would be taking place anyway. So there's no additionality in that either. Again, it has been undermined by the politics and by the lobbyists. So the article today we have a lot of additional readings that you may want to take a look at as well. Next week, we will be issuing an article about fighting rural poverty by protecting forest carbon. Often we hear that timber extraction is good for rural communities. It creates jobs and rural wealth. The fact is there is a resource curse. Forest extractive activities increase poverty in the community, and that has been proven over and over. The tax burden mostly relies on the communities, while big timber does use the roads, pollutes the watersheds, has their kids in the schools and the healthcare, etc. But the taxes are being paid for by the community themselves. There is actually here, if I wanted to show you this real quick, there is a good graphic when you go to the read more by the Center for Global Development. To the left, you see keeping forests maintains clean air, natural foods and medicines, local rainfall for crops, fresh water and irrigation and drinking, sediment-free waterways. Meanwhile, when deforested forests, they increase forest fires, there increase respiratory illnesses, landslides, there are more severe floods, and there's a lot of erosion leading to sedimentation, which leads to different types of insects, etc., that we don't want around. So anyway, it is not true that logging reduces poverty in communities. After that, we will talk about keep it in the watershed. The forests, what we hear a lot is that that trees take our water. They basically drink our water, that they have nothing to do with precipitation or weather. The truth is that forests regulate the hydrological cycle that drives weather patterns. The forests are a biotic pump. Through transpiration, condensation, and infiltration of the water, they move precipitation, and they also slow the water down, which is really important to avoid runoff, to avoid flooding, soil erosion, sedimentation, etc., what we just saw on the other slide. It also filters the water for the watershed and the groundwater, which is the agriculture, potable health, everything for that. And finally, the water cycle has a massive economical impact, which therefore the forests have as well. Just think about droughts and storm, what they can do to agriculture or to businesses such as fisheries. And then we've seen the storms, the property values, insurances, etc. Property values decrease, insurances go up, and it can wreak havoc. A very important topic is the 5 years left to meet global nature protections. In 2020, the world came together and said by 2030, 30% of the lands and waters need to be permanently protected for biodiversity. So this is the Global Biodiversity Framework from the IPCC. But instead, we are hearing that this biodiversity framework is a land grab, and that wildlife needs the Forest Service to create habitat for it, and that we are also hearing that extractive activities do not impact the land. According to the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, however, 1 million species will be lost over the next years due to forest degradation. So what states have been doing is they've been putting lands and waters into conservation, and this is this little dashboard you see here to the right. And however, conservation allows extractive uses, including mining, logging, agriculture, etc. This is not what we need. We need permanent protections and proforestation. So a solution to this is the 100 National Parks campaign. And shout out to Michael Kellett for putting that together from Restore the North Woods. Really, it is about moving lands that from extractive uses to permanent protection and putting them either into the National Park Service, the National Wilderness Protection Services, or the National Wildlife Refugee Services to reach 30% and protect permanently the forests and the waters in that. And we have, I believe, 3 more topics. Our topic number 10 is on climate. So what we're hearing is that climate change doesn't exist, it won't affect us, etc. We are at this point expecting business as usual to continue because it has been continuing as usual for the last 35 years. Nothing has changed, and our emissions are continuously increasing. So with business as usual, we will see a 3°C increase of temperatures by 2050. That will mean a contraction of 50% of the GDP and 4 billion deaths from the effects of climate change, be it heat waves, drought, floods, sea level rise, novel diseases, or social upheavals. Continuing logging eliminates this sequestration capacity for the CO2, which could actually make a dent, but it also adds emissions worsening climate change. So forests are increasingly susceptible to climate change, and there are actually some feedback loops that we did not expect. So it is accelerating faster than it could. Canopy removal, as we saw, is increasing temperatures, evaporation, erosion, and floods. So we're back to step 1. What we need is proforestation on all public lands, extended logging rotations on any timberland, and acquisition to connect forest reserves. The eastern forest, we are hearing often that is not as important or not as magnificent as the western forests. And yes, we do have the redwoods, which are absolutely smashing, but eastern forests are the most important carbon sink in this country. And these eastern forests are undergoing mesification. They are becoming moister and they're becoming denser. We're getting more tropical, literally. This is, from a climate perspective, a desirable transformation. 1, we're adapting to climate change, and 2, we are absorbing more CO2, the eastern forests are, and we are providing even more variety for wildlife. So eastern forests also, since they are relatively young, have an enormous sequestration potential, including far into the future. So we need to protect these, and we need to stop our Forest Service from resetting the composition and structure to increasingly unnatural conditions, trying to keep them drier, trying to have more oak hickory as opposed to the mesophytic forests. We are spending a lot of money on doing something that is impossible in the long run. And finally, we conclude our data and science-based series with more of an emotional aspect. We have an article about mushrooms, hunter's hope, but really what we're talking about is that there is a connection between humans and forests. We have evolved together, and be it through forest bathing, foraging, cultural, spiritual connection, be it hunting, there is a true connection and a true culture around forests. Native Americans had the generational gift of 7 generations. You will always look far ahead. It's very different from what we do, Western societies, where we look maybe 20, 30 years ahead, and that's considerable. So, good. These are the 12 key topics. And as I said, you have the messaging points in the slides. And if you have any questions whatsoever, you can always get in touch with me. So we're going back to the slide deck then. Here, we looked at the slides. So how does this translate into action at the federal level? And we will look at the Forest Protection Climate Justice Act, and Chad will take it from here. And then we'll look at what you can do and how. Thank you, Chad.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Chad Hansen, forest and fire ecologist and director of the John Muir Project. Going to be talking a little bit today about the Forest Protection and Climate Justice Act. So I'm going to give kind of an overview thematically what the act would really do, as opposed to just going through the technical details of each section. I feel like in this context, that's going to be more meaningful. And of course, we can go into more detail in Q&A. So basically, the idea is this. Number one, get the federal public land agencies out of the logging business. So, ending logging on federal public lands, ending removal of trees for any commodity, timber, biomass, other commodities. And so getting the land agencies out of that relationship with the logging industry, protecting them fully from logging. National Forests, Bureau of Land Management forests, National Wildlife Refuges. There's some logging on National Wildlife Refuges too, and national parks. A lot of people don't realize that logging happens on some national parks, and it's pretty destructive. So that's number one. Number two, ending logging subsidies, basically redirecting all the subsidies, the billions of dollars we're spending on logging on public lands, because we're not going to be doing that anymore, but also ending and redirecting logging subsidies elsewhere. So it requires an evaluation of all the different subsidies that go to the logging industry, direct and indirect, and ending those, and then redirecting all the money we're spending right now subsidizing logging on public lands and subsidizing logging on private lands, and redirecting that into other purposes. One of those is a jobs program to help communities become fire safe in both the East and the West, because a lot of communities are vulnerable. And this is a jobs program to basically create fire safe communities. So it shifts our wildland fire policies completely 180 degrees, because right now it's all focused on backcountry logging and subsidizing that. Instead, we're going to shift that and focus it right on the communities where it really does work: home hardening, defensible space pruning, and evacuation planning and assistance, and a jobs program to make that happen. Number two, acquisition of private forest lands from willing sellers, so that we can actually connect, as Sonia mentioned, connect disconnected forest areas, so that we can actually create more access to nature for communities that don't really have much access to nature, especially in some areas of the Southeast and Northeast, where a lot of communities are a long ways from the nearest national forest. So we want to actually prioritize those acquisition in those areas where we can not only connect habitats and other public lands, but also increase access to nature in the areas that need it most. Uh, uh, Next is funding to actually staff those newly acquired protected public forest lands, so that we can actually create jobs in local communities and increase economic vitality, and shift away from communities based on timber extraction, which, as Sonia mentioned, contrary to the narrative we hear from the logging industry, as logging goes up, personal income goes down, and employment in the communities goes down, particularly in rural communities. As logging goes down, employment goes up, personal income goes up. And you see economic vitality across the board in rural communities as the percentage of protected public lands in rural counties, for example, goes up. Economic vitality goes up too. So this is good for communities. A couple other things I'll mention here that are key. Some resources going into shifting away from wood consumption and into non-wood alternatives for paper, for building materials. There are lots of alternatives, but it's hard for them to get market share because the logging industry is so heavily subsidized. So we've got our thumb on the scale economically, and it's favoring the logging industry. It makes it hard for non-wood alternatives to compete, and that needs to change. So the bill would help shift that. The bill also has a provision to prevent new biomass facilities, forest biomass energy facilities, including wood pellet facilities, from being built or permits given, or even a renewal of permits, where those would disproportionately impact communities that are already being disproportionately impacted, lower income communities, communities of color. This is particularly a big problem in the Southeast and also in the Northeast. It's increasingly a problem in the West, including in California. We're seeing this again and again. So the biomass industry is locating these incredibly polluting biomass plants and wood pellet facilities, which emit and produce even more pollutants than coal plants, toxic and particulate. They're locating them in the communities that they feel have the least political capital and wealth to fight back, and that's wrong. And so the bill would help reverse that. And the one other thing I'll mention here that I think is important is that, we've had a program for decades now to help small rural farmers maintain their land, and we provide some financial assistance to keep that going. But we haven't extended that to forest landowners. So basically, one of the provisions would actually help small forest landowners maintain their forests as forests and not log them. And this is something that would be an important innovation that would help a lot, especially in those areas where you've got a lot of small woodlot owners that don't necessarily want to log their forests, but they're finding themselves in financial crisis, and sometimes that ends up happening. Sometimes big corporations move in and make them a deal, and it ends up being bad for everybody. So this would help maintain those forests as forests and help advance the cause of pro-forestation. So I'll leave it there for now, and certainly we can talk more about the details of some of the sections in Q&A if folks want more detail.
Thank you, Chad. Yes, we will have at least 15 minutes, I'm hoping, for Q&A, probably more. So what can you do and how can you help our forests? So first of all, do please refer to this presentation for any key messaging points that may speak to your area and your community. There will be others. And focus on a topic that makes sense to you at any given point in time. So for example, what's happening around you? What is the industry and what is the Forest Service up to? Try to keep it local, try to keep it current. Are there any bad logging projects going on? Are there pellet factories planned? Are there cross-laminated timber industry? Are they coming in? They are here in Maryland, for example. Add visual support anytime you can. It drives the eye, it draws the eye in, and it draws the attention to the topic. Always be data-driven for credibility, and please be consistent. Refer to the data we've provided here on the website and in the slides, especially the website is far more complete. And if you have any questions or you need any additional material, please email us, me, Sonia, and Jennifer, who couldn't be here today, but her email is here as well. So please take some time to read the articles, peruse the data on the website and any further readings, and then feel free to use our write-ups freely, the Forest Carbon Coalition's, but please do be careful when you cite further readings that are also on that website and any other resources. Cite them carefully. As mentioned, pictures are worth 1,000 words. If you can take your own pictures, that's always the safest. Put your name on it as a credit and a time. And if you have the time to do so, please upload them to our drive that we will be sharing as well. If you do not have the time or cannot take the pictures, Wikimedia Commons, if you Google that and you put in the title of what you're looking for, you can usually find something for free. And there are some free stock images, but they're hard to find. And once you have anything published, again, please upload it to our drive so that we can share it and we can amplify it. So the ideal grassroots campaign is consistent, continuous, multiple sourced, all of you, data-driven, straightforward, and it's very clear information about the 12 key forest topics. The credibility is key because if anybody puts out any information that is not 100% correct, we are undermining our own argument. So we have to be data-driven and science-driven. Please refer to all the data and information provided on the website. Use your voice, use your opportunity to divulge that shared data. We're not telling you how to say it or what specifically to say, just make sure that the data is correct. And then consistency, repeat. Even if we have 3 times the same article, even though that's not necessarily, it's a bit of a waste of effort, it's not bad. What we need to make sure is that we're consistent. We want to be continued. We want to create a drumbeat. The more the public is exposed to our messages repeatedly, the better. They will start, incorporating it into their own minds. Whenever possible as well, please send us your write-ups before publishing so that we can make sure that we are consistent. And we, meaning me and Jennifer. And we can also help you edit. And as I said, we will have a shared Google Drive. It is closed access. So that link, when you click on it, it will say you don't have access, you have to ask for access, and I will give it to you because we don't want people who are trying to undermine our arguments to also upload things. Becca put together here the letter to the editor versus opinion editorial, and I believe Chad, you wanted to discuss this? These are two forms of reaching out to the community.
Yeah, sure. I'll just talk about this a little bit. These are some of the best grassroots ways to get your message out and inform and shape public opinion, especially around a campaign like this, where we have an education component, but also a legislative component. Letters to the editor, they're free. Opinion editorials, they're free. I think it's oftentimes useful to organize a group of forest protection advocates and climate change advocates get together monthly at particular date, time, place, and do a letter writing group. Write. I recommend keeping them to usually 125 words. Increases your odds, but no more than 150 for most newspapers. Some they'll let you go up to 200 words, but shorter is typically better. And just try to generate as many as possible. This is a really, really important thing, and also a lot of policymakers pay attention to letters to the editor. Same thing for opinion editorials. You have to be timely. All opinion editorials, they need a hook. So something that's going on that's timely, that's happening in the public conversation. For example, Trump's recent executive orders promoting more logging on public lands. That's a hook, for example. Things like that come up all the time. That's a really good way to build your opinion editorial around something like that, some key event. And for letters to the editor, if folks don't know, typically what you want to do is you anchor it on a recent news story that came out in a particular news outlet, on that particular day or a couple of days ago. Then you write the letters to the editor and you submit them. Typically, you want to do that within a day or two of that news story, and you reference the news story in the first line. So, in addition to just, physical monthly, get-togethers to write letters to the editor, you can also just have an online group where you do it on an ongoing basis, and that can be very effective and can bring in more people if they can't get there physically. And that way, you can also be more responsive and timely in getting letters to the editor out. So, I'll leave it there. But as people get into this, and if you start developing these letter to editor writing groups promoting pro-forestation, promoting an end to logging on national forests, and the Forest Protection and Climate Justice Act, we're always happy to be a resource. Feel free to reach out. We've been doing this for a long time, and we're always happy to provide pointers and information and fact sheets, anything you need. Thanks.
Thank you, Chad. And in addition to letters to the editor and op-eds, there are many other resources that you can use. You can, of course, write your own article if you have the time and research and come up with a thesis and put something together. We have a lot of very bright minds out there. Similarly, you can write blog posts. They can go into enormous detail, and there are a lot of very broad-reaching blogs out there. Use your social media handles. Consider creating new ones. You can use everything from Instagram to TikTok to LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever you have. Push out the information, just tiny little bits of information, ideally with a graphic. It really makes a difference. And always tag the Forest Carbon Coalition organizations. When you click on this link, you will see the 120 organizations listed, and we hope there will be many more coming. So tag as many as you can so we can amplify it. Again, it's this mycelial network, basically, that we're trying to create. Seek out some podcasts that you think might be interesting, and see if you can, have an interview on the radio, or in the news. If there is anything specific happening in the area, you could be the expert, calling out what is really happening there. Videos are very popular. Visual support is always key. And then there are basic in-person presentations that you could make to your community, to your school, to your club. Use the information provided, make it local, make it current to your neck of the woods, and go out and talk to people. And you can always, of course, engage people one-on-one. And then finally, in addition to yours helping the forests, we want to help you as well. So if there is something that you are seeing that's happening in your state or in your neck of the woods, again, as kind of sort of too often here, Let us know. We can help you. We can maybe alert some of your elected officials. We can tie it into specific write-ups, into specific op-eds or LTEs. If there is something that you want to call out that you see that is not kosher out there, let us know. And again, any photography and data you can share with us is much appreciated. If you upload it or if you email us what you have, and we'll figure out what to do with it. And yes, so we are ready for questions and answers.
Okay.
Stop this.
Okay, I'm going to start with this first one. I assume it's probably going to be for Sonia. It's more about the webinar attendance. But Ronnie is asking if there is a possibility that you could provide an e-certificate for attendees as, a certificate of participation or anything.
I'll be happy to write a note or something saying that you're participating, but we did not upfront come up with any sort of credit structure for this. So I can't really give you a credit if this is for continuing education. But yeah, we can probably write a note saying that you attended.
Yeah, with that, I would just email Sonia afterwards to get some sort of written form. The next question is from Glenn. They're asking, who authored the Forest Protection and Climate Justice Act? Who are the sponsors in the House and Senate? And will you be organizing the support for this legislation?
Yeah, so the John Muir project took a lead on this, but worked with many other organizations. Folks at Forest Carbon Coalition were a key co-author. John Talberth, and lots of organizations participated, but mostly this was Forest Carbon Coalition and John Muir Project, with input from many folks in conservation and environmental justice communities. The bill's not introduced yet, and so we're just starting that process. So that's where we really need to get grassroots support to get a champion to introduce the bill, and then start building up grassroots support to get co-sponsors. So we'll be doing that over the coming months and years moving forward. So this is the start of that process. And sorry, what was the last part of that question? Or maybe that was the whole thing.
Sorry.
So.
Last question was, will you be organizing the support for this legislation?
Yes, we will.
Working
yes,
on it.
But yes, we will, but we'll need lots of help.
And the next question related to this bill, Stephen is wondering what the status of it is.
Same answer. Yeah. Same answer.
Okay. Let's go to Janine is wondering if the information Chad presented, I'm assuming on the bill, if it's on the climatecc.org website.
So no, climatecc.org is the Climate Communications Coalition. We did not publish this bill as of yet because we don't have a champion, and Chad, I think there may be some tweaks, etc. So we did not want to roll out the wording of the bill in full.
But we'll be doing that soon.
Okay, great. Next question is from Ken. They're asking, do you have more detail on the argument that eliminating logging improves local economies and vice versa?
Yes, please do go to the grassroots website. You will find additional readings. And if you are looking for something specific, let us know, please. We can probably find it for you if there's any specific data point you're looking for.
Yeah, there are a number of studies on this. Forest Carbon Coalition has a lot of this stuff assembled already, but also, John Muir Project has done work on this too. Just one example that's very recent, in the draft environmental impact statement for the Forest Service's proposal to basically do away with the Northwest Forest Plan and triple logging levels in northern spotted owl habitat on public lands in the Northwest. Terrible proposal. But in their draft environmental impact statement, they admit that if they increase logging, that employment will go down and per capita income will go down. And they have two figures in their draft EIS that go back to the 1960s, I think, and all the way up to the present. And this show the trends. And as logging goes up, employment goes down. As logging goes down, employment goes up. Same thing with personal income. So, this is fairly well established that, really protecting forests is really, really good for economies and including and especially rural economies.
What Chad just said, you will see that on the graphic on the homepage as well for the grassroots network. I actually put that chart up there, the DEIS.
Oh, and
So
by
there's
the
a lot of
way,
information. Sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead.
no, that's all right. Another thing that's a good resource, there's a good report came out several years ago by Headwaters Economics, and they looked at the percentage of rural counties that is comprised of not just public lands, but protected public lands specifically. And as that percentage of protected public lands goes up in a rural county, per capita income goes up and unemployment goes down.
If you think about it, there's far more broader range of jobs with a healthy forest, everything from recreation to, like from camping and ecotourism, etc., as opposed to logging. Once the forest is logged, it's gone, and there's nothing else to be done. So just think about it long term as well. It's sort of, it makes sense.
Okay, next question is from Scott. They're asking, the Ready Mix Concrete Association does not like the timber industry putting its thumb on the carbon scales. How about steel?
Well, I mean, steel certainly, the steel industry certainly doesn't like the logging industry putting its thumb on the scales too. They haven't really gotten particularly involved in this, but it's not good for, in particular, light gauge steel construction for residential homes. It has a pretty small market share in the country overall. It's not totally insignificant, but it's much smaller than it would be if it wasn't for all the subsidies for logging. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize about light gauge steel, and it's not the only non-wood alternative. There are multiple ones out there that are not wood, but light gauge steel is one. That steel is a very, very recyclable material, and light gauge steel generally is mostly post-consumer recycled steel, oftentimes upwards of 70%.
Okay, next one is from Mark. They said, so this is happening in Portland, Oregon against fierce opposition. And then he goes on to quote an article he shared. It says, Portland General Electric plans to log about 400 trees within a section of intact mature forest to relocate an existing power line, install 2 new power poles, and wire 1,400 feet of transmission lines. Unfortunately, the Portland City Hearing Officer approved this project. What can be done after these projects are approved?
Well, so I don't know the details of that local circumstance, but what I can say generally is that sometimes you have a city manager or a county manager approving something like that, but the city council or the county board of supervisors, they can reverse those decisions. They can step in, and they can sometimes do that and sometimes will if there's enough grassroots pressure on them to change course. So, I mean, I think if there are folks that who know people in the city council, or just get a grassroots groundswell of people making calls and sending texts and emails and doing social media to put pressure on the city council, maybe you can get that reversed or at least paused so you can have a conversation about it instead of just being rushed forward.
And consider getting a media champion if there's an outlet that might send a reporter along and really show what the devastation would be after this happens. And then last resort would be a lawsuit. But yes, again, that's very time and money consuming.
Yeah, that's always a possibility too. But again, this is another place where letters to the editor, to the Portland Oregonian could make a big difference.
Okay, next question is, since mass timber is not a good solution, do you know of alternative materials for construction with lower life cycle emissions? LCAs on cross-laminated bamboo look promising.
From what I've seen, yes. And there's some other material as well. Everything, mycelial textures and things like that they're using as well. There's a lot of exploration going on, but Chad, you probably know better.
No, that's right. And I don't know as much about the bamboo construction. I think that's interesting. I want to learn more about that myself. And Sonia's right. There's some really exciting stuff going on with mycelial building materials, which is really interesting. I'll just mention a couple other ways. We talked about light gauge, recycled light gauge steel for housing construction, also commercial buildings. That's a viable option. It is a better alternative in my view, and on a number of levels, certainly better than logging forests and depleting our carbon sinks. But there's a couple others out there that are really interesting that are fairly new. So hempcrete from industrial hemp. It didn't used to be structural. It is now. There's at least one company that's starting to produce load-bearing structural hempcrete blocks that is slightly carbon negative. So it has a very, very low carbon footprint. And it's cheaper than wood, especially if wood isn't subsidized. And the construction process is much, much quicker. So that's an interesting one. There's a company in Los Angeles that just started up a couple of years ago. They're growing rapidly. They're building homes from recycled plastic, 100% post-consumer recycled plastic with 3D printing technology. So they are 3D printing recycled plastic homes. This is a real thing, and it's growing quickly. They're called Azure printed homes. So it's interesting. There's a lot of alternatives. We don't need to be turning to our forests for building materials. We really don't. I mean, wood is not a great option. It's destroying a lot of important habitat and biodiversity. It's making climate change worse. It's plundering our best carbon sinks, and it's expensive, and it rots and it burns. It's just not a great option, honestly. So we really start needing to shift. This is not to say that there's no wood products that anyone's ever going to use in the future, but we do really need to start shifting away from wood consumption, just in the same way that we're shifting away from fossil fuels. We need to have that same conversation because we need to do it for the same reasons.
All right. Excuse me. Stephen asked if we're communicating with Jared Huffman about the Forest Protection and Climate Act.
We have not communicated with him or his office yet about the bill specifically. We have talked with him about the general concept, the principles, and the reason, the need to shift away from logging on national forests. So that we'll have more of those conversations. I think we need to pull them a little bit more in our direction, and I think that's where some grassroots organizing and pressure is going to become important.
And Jennifer is asking, are you saying you would like to see an LTE before it's published? Given some urgency on submission, would that be a hindrance?
No, you're good.
Sorry. So in order to make sure that we're consistent in our language and everything, ideally, yes. But and we can also turn it around really, really quickly. If you email it to us, we can turn around in half an hour. So that shouldn't be necessarily an issue. If you don't think it works for you, then that's perfectly fine. We just want as much information, data-driven, science-driven information out there as possible.
Yeah, and also bear in mind, you can write letters to the editor and opinion editorials making the argument for ending logging on national forests and fully protecting federal public lands and ending logging subsidies and acquiring more excuse me, private forest lands into protected ownership. You can make those arguments without referencing a specific bill, and that's highly effective also.
Yeah, so the key is to inform the public about the importance of forests and the ecosystem services and what is really happening and the disinformation out there. That in itself will also support the bill.
Absolutely.
Okay, Tim is asking, has anyone with the FCC taken on critiquing the so-called science within the life cycle analyses that have led to the meme that using more wood in construction is carbon friendly? I've done a good bit of work in this area and haven't found a single LCA that includes emissions from land use change. An obvious bias towards concluding that wood is way better than concrete and steel in terms of emissions. I'd be pleased to see this or to work with someone on this.
I believe there was a study that we have referenced in the cross-laminated timber, the we need taller trees, not taller buildings article. If you have a quick look at that, I believe you will find something there. And if not, yeah, I mean, it's definitely this. I'm quite sure it's in there. If not, then we should have a look at it. And yeah, cooperation is always welcome.
Okay, next question is from Max. They're asking, where can I find the LCA showing that mass timber has a 6% higher carbon footprint than concrete? How is soil carbon loss measured?
You will find that, I believe, as well in this article. If not, John Talbert will be able to find that for you. And soil carbon, there's different types of measuring it. A lot of it is through GIS systems. There's hands-on measurements of carbon as well, depending, like on soil depth, etc. Chad, I don't know if you want to chime in on that one.
Yeah, there have been some measurements, some field-based measurements of that as well. Most soil carbon is deeper down and it's not disrupted, but a certain percentage is disrupted and is lost through ground-based logging operations. We have a citation to one of those studies in a sign-on letter from over 200 climate scientists and ecologists from 2020, June of 2020, that is on the John Muir Project's website. It's probably on Forest Carbon Coalition's website as well.
Yes.
If you reach out, we can send that to you. And we also have, by the way, there's a citation in that same scientist letter from over 200 scientists, a citation to the loss of ecosystem nutrients when trees are removed, because you're removing the nutrients in the bark and the foliage and the tree itself. The loss of that and the reduction in carbon sequestration potential as a result of that nutrient robbing from the system. And so those are factors that need to be taken into account. So I mean, like a lot of the figures that are out there in terms of how bad wood is, that they're actually conservative, and they would even be worse if a lot of these other factors were taken into account. We try to do some of that in this scientist letter in 2020, so that's worth taking a look at.
Yes, if you email me, I'll email it to you, that letter. I have it here.
All right, thanks guys. Next question is from Steven. He wants to know why there are so few tribes listed as members of the Forest Carbon Coalition.
I haven't signed up yet. We would love to have more tribes in the Forest Carbon Coalition. Absolutely. I mean, we will reach out to the Environmental Indigenous Network as well and see if we can get additional people on there as well. That's a good point.
Okay, that's it for questions. So
And it's 2 o'clock.
we're right on time. Chad, if you don't mind, I can send that scientist letter in the chat right now.
Yeah, please do.
And everyone, you have our emails. You have my email, soniademiray@climatecc.com. You got jennifermamola at johnmuirproject.org. Sorry, mine is climatecc.org as well. Email us if you have any questions. Do take some time out to peruse that website, the grassroots website. It is the complete version of what we're working on for the general public. If you look at the general public website, it'll only have the first 6 published articles to date, the last one this morning. Every week we add one in. The grassroots website is complete. So, and I will be adding additional videos and charts and data as we find them. I wanted to call out one right on the LA fires. There is a PBS show tonight about the LA fires. I put a button towards that programming link as well on the grassroots website. It's right there underneath the fire article. So that might be something really interesting to look at tonight as well. And thank you so much again for being here. Let's not lose hope. There's more than 100 people here. We're going to work towards the forest. We're going to create a massive network of support, and we are here to help each other. So please do reach out, and thank you again for making the time in the middle of your day to be here with us.
Thanks, everybody.